Hello and welcome to Reason's Webathon live stream. He needs no introduction. The man, the myth, the legend. It's Andrew Heaton here with us today. Heaton, what have you been up to?
Hello, Liz. A pleasure to be with you in all contexts, but particularly here with the various Reason supporters and donors and hang-ons at this time. I've been making funny stuff with Reason all over the place, just merrily slopping comedy everywhere. So we're cranking out about a video a week, which is pretty high for us. Quality hasn't improved, but the quantity's really improved over the last year. So we've been doing that. We had a very funny one, I thought, last week, just kind of keying off of public events about turkey pardons. And I'm really developing my character as a sociopathic press conference.
Character.
Yeah, my character is basically it's just a more successful version of me, where I end up being the comms director for the White House or some other thing.
If you donate to Reason today, you can help Heaton play a more successful version of himself on television.
Yeah. So like here's what we want. We want to have enough to bump up my performance level. Because to be honest with you, I'm phoning it in right now. But if you were to double the salary, I think I would increase my quality. But if you triple it, we could probably just use that to outsource me to AI. So what we're going for is doubling the amount of money.
What a beautiful admission to get on your employer's live stream and say, well, I have a motivation issue. No, but really, I mean, the comedy team has been working so hard, and I've been at Reason for 7 or 8 years now, and it's wild watching how the Bragg brothers and Andrew Heaton have just absolutely transformed what started as this beautiful little glimmer in whose eye was it? Meredith Bragg's, or who was the one who really dreamed it up? I just know we've had so many hits over the years. And then Remy's inclusion has been absolutely extraordinary. But then I think a few years ago, Heaton got swindled into doing this more full time, right, Heaton?
That's right. Well, I've now been full time at Reason for one year and change. I moved up here last October, just before the election. And
they let you in the district?
Well, technically, no. I'm in Northern Virginia. Okay. So I'm not actually in DC proper, although I'm able to slink in. Me and Austin Bragg have a horse costume that we use to get past the gate, and then we're able to get in. But yeah, I've been here for a year, and it's great. The Bragg brothers are terrific to work with. They're very funny. So for anybody unfamiliar with them, if you see, we do 2 different types of funny videos at Reason. There's the funny musical guy, that's Remy, and then there's the not musical funny guys. That's me and Austin and Meredith, and they work on Remy's videos as well. Austin is my counterpart if you ever see him on camera with me, but he probably won't be on today because he's been indicted. But he's still producing comedy, and they're very funny. They're very, very funny. And I'll add, having done a lot of comedy, don't be jealous, Liz, for a lot of different outlets, they're really easy and fun to work with, and they're very good at editing. Like they would be very good in a straight up comedy context anywhere in the United States, and they have deigned to slum it with me.
Well, let's not get them poached here. You know, it's important that they stick around here at Reason for a while, which is what your donation can help with if you donate today. Mm-hmm. Heaton, what are some of the greatest hits you guys have had over the course of 2025?
Over the course of 2025, I really love the sketches that we do. Those are my favorites. So the favorite, my personal favorite that we did one called New Tariff in Town, where I got to play a cowboy, and it consisted of me marching through the doors of a saloon and then repeatedly announcing, we're going to do 22% tariffs, and then like marching right back in and going, the stock market took a gamble. We're gonna reduce that to 15%, and then coming back in and going, I just met the nicest Chinese man. We're going to relax, and then coming back in and going, he was Japanese. We're back on. So that was my favorite. I really like it when I get to play a character. In terms of the ones that we've done that have done particularly well, people seem to really like it when Austin and I play coaches. So one of the ongoing motifs that we use is post-game analysis breakdown, where I play the coach for the blue team. He plays the coach for the red team. I am told that I do an incredible job of channeling the frustration of a professional football coach who does not want to talk to the press. I don't know, because I've never been a professional football coach and I don't really watch it, but my annoyance is palpable. And Austin is great at either being kind of the the adult version of the high school bully pushing people around, or just being dead inside. He really plays those characters fantastic, and he channels them into that. Those have done really well. I think we did one called Shoulder Lock that did particularly well, where you recall when Elon Musk made I'm not going to do it. He made a gesture that was interpreted as a Nazi salute at one point. We had a thing riffing on that about we've developed this product called Shoulder Lock, where it won't allow your shoulder to go above this angle. I'm thinking the most racist thing I can right now. You'd be amazed, but I can't bring it up to a full Zig Heil. So that one did pretty well. Really, anything involving Trump or Elon Musk tends to do really well, but my favorites will always be the sketches.
That's so beautiful that you refrained from doing that salute within the first 5 minutes of our fundraising live stream.
Thank you. Which I would have been making fun of, for the record. I would have been making fun of it, but I know enough not to get caught on camera.
People were flipping out at Elon Musk kind of for no reason, to my mind, but we don't need to get into that today. I mean, Heaton, I want to ask you something that I'm sure many other people have asked you so far this week. Would you mind opening the kimono a bit and giving our donors a little bit of a sense of what is coming up for you in 2026? What things are a brewing? What are you excited to work on? Which politician are you most excited to mock?
Thank you. Well, first, I've been told explicitly by Catherine not to open the kimono at reason. And I've been told in no uncertain terms, God, there's all these things. For an organization that quote unquote loves freedom, I'm not allowed to smoke cigarettes in the bathroom anymore. I not only can I not open the kimono, I'm not allowed to go to the office in the kimono. I have to wear trousers. So it's actually not quite as freewheeling as everybody thinks. Still fun. In terms of things that we're excited for, the way that we've got the setup right now is we're producing content about weekly, and we're developing a better and better rhythm of cranking out one high quality, high production explainer video per month. And then in the meantime, we do newsy reactive videos, and they're all fun to do. We do the one explainer video per month. So if anybody's unfamiliar with these, imagine a free market, pro-freedom, much less successful John Oliver, like that kind of thing. Somebody explaining policy. So in the meantime, I know we've got one coming up probably this week on housing. That's become a bugaboo for me. I am continually baffled that in America, we simultaneously want the value of houses to go up astronomically because that's where we have our equity, but also houses are too expensive, Liz. Houses are too expensive. We need to make houses less expensive. I am pioneering a theory that if we make houses worth more, they might cost more. This is my theory that I'm working with. And so we've got a video on that. I actually get into some Japanese policy because I think Japan's a very good exemplar for things that we can do. Are they fine with
you opening the kimono over there or no? Not so much.
I am beloved in Japan for my antics. I am the who's that dead comedian the French really like that fell down a lot? You know who I'm talking about? I'm that guy for Japan. They love me. I'm huge over there. I have dozens of fans in Japan. So we're working on that. In terms of the other things we have going, by virtue of the month-long cycle, I can't get too far ahead because
Which cycle are we talking about?
We've got this down to an art. We've got we do one explainer video, and we do 2 or 3 newsy videos.
I wasn't sure if you were transitioning or what. I'm talking about your month-long cycle, Andrew Heaton.
I have many spinning plates that I cannot elaborate on.
One explainer video a month. But tell me, if I donate today, Andrew Heaton, surely I won't be donating for you to do housing explainer videos in lieu of all of the comedy programming that I've come to expect, right?
Can I make my pitch, Liz? I've got a twofold pitch. All right. Here, listeners and viewers, this is my pitch for why you should give Reason money. First, let's be honest with ourselves. You're spending money on way dumber shit than us on a regular basis. I bet right now, you probably have half a pizza you're going to throw out. Maybe an entire cake. You bought it. It was an impulse buy. You're not even going to eat that cake. You had a slice of cake. You're going to throw it out. You could have put that on us. We would have put that money to better use. In terms of dumb crap you're wasting your money on around Christmas, we're pretty good. I think we should be high on that list of things that you spend money on compared to like buying some goofy gift for your grandma that she doesn't even like. You're going to get half a chuckle of it. Just, give everybody cufflinks and then send us money. It's going to be worth your time. In terms of why you should support the comedy. I actually have a pretty good pitch on this that involves some strategy to this. I've been funny and political now for about 15 years. And what I can tell you is that your ability to get other people to sit down and listen to you argue is very minimal. People don't typically want to sit down and argue with you. It's not super effective in comments on Twitter and YouTube. That's not going to change the world. A lot of people don't tend to change their mind based on arguments with AssRaptor 432 on Twitter that they're doing at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. And as you argue with people, you get spurts of all these not fun chemicals. You get adrenaline, you get cortisol. It makes you more closed off towards other ideas. What opens people to ideas is laughing. And I have firsthand experience. I can vouch for this. If I'm doing stand-up, and I believe this translates even more on YouTube, if I'm doing stand-up and I'm telling a joke, people will walk with me for the length of the joke. They actually want to hear what the punchline is going to be. And you have this brief window where if you're funny, you can lubricate people to where they will entertain your idea. And I think that the videos that we post are actually very effective in that regard. And I say that because I've had many people come up to me back when I was living in New York in particular, where they'd say, hey, I saw Libertarian Game of Thrones, or I saw this video you guys did. I think you're crazy, but that was very funny. And I'll take that. I don't mind people thinking I'm crazy as long as they think I'm funny. And in the meantime, some of those ideas slip in. And I think that with a lot of the explainer videos that we do, what they have the capacity to do is maybe not convert people to my particular viewpoint. I think that that's very difficult to do in life, but we're pretty good at getting people to be smarter versions of what they already are. And so there are people that are more progressive or more conservative than us that'll watch those videos, and they're not going to jump over into the camp. They're not going to get a Hayek t-shirt and start mainlining Ayn Rand into their veins. But when they're at the town planning meeting about zoning, they'll remember this funny video and they're going to go, I still basically agree with everybody, but this one thing that we were planning to do is going to be stupid and it's probably going to cause harm. I'm good at using humor to get people to be less dumb versions of whatever they are. And humor is a very, very good tool for disseminating ideas.
I have a little bit of a competing pitch, Andrew Heaton. My pitch is there's literally no competition in the political comedy space right now because late night TV is so horrifying and pathetic. And so please let libertarians fill the void. I mean, we wouldn't be afraid of the competition if it did in fact exist, but it doesn't. Heaton's the best guy out there. Okay, Andrew Heaton, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, Liz. And thank you all the supporters out there.
We will be going to Cesar Baez in 1 second. But right now, take a moment to donate. I can shut up and make sure that you get the opportunity to click on Reason's provided links and decide to donate to the comedy team. Andrew Heaton, the Bragg brothers, Remy. I mean, Reason has been taking care of our comedy needs for many, many years now. And it's just going to get better and better as Heaton told you. I mean, also one other thing that Heaton and I were talking about for a moment there in the green room is he's got to find a wife. He's really, really hoping that there's somebody out there watching his videos. So also, if you want to earmark a donation for Heaton and or provide your name and number, if you're an eligible young lady, please do let us know. We would be happy to do some matchmaking in our spare time. Are we ready, DC office? Oh yeah, there he is. Hello, Cesar, what's up?
Hey Liz, thanks for having me. Well, we started in a very high note with comedy. I wish I could be half as fun as Andrew Heaton, but very happy to share some of the things that I've been working on.
You and I tend to do less laughing and talk more about Venezuelan boat strikes these days. To give our viewers a little bit of context here, Cesar is Venezuelan. He's a producer for Reason TV. He also does a ton of covering of Javier Milei's presidency in Argentina. And Cesar Baez has just been a huge addition to Reason staff in the last few years, just really enabling us to cover the sort of first libertarian president in modern history who's burst on the scene. Tell us about your Milei coverage. Give us some hot takes, unveil some new things, speak some hard truths, Cesar.
Well, first of all, Milei indeed is the first self-proclaimed libertarian president in history, but this could be not ideal for many people, especially for many libertarians, because it's different to talk in abstraction about ideas, philosophy, policy recommendations. That's one thing. But getting into office and applying all these ideas is just a different world. So Milei has been target of many criticism. Many of them, I think, are very, very valid, but speak a lot about how ideas clash with real world politics, and how Milei, despite being well new to politics, he has traveled through all these first 2 years of his presidency with a lot of smart decisions, maybe not ideal, perfect libertarian solutions to many problems that Argentina has. But I've been trying to cover that part of the story, besides the brags, besides the big economic successes. But I'm trying to focus more on the real day-to-day politics, which I think it's really interesting for people.
The reason why I like Cesar and why I think people should donate to support his work is because I just feel like he is such an incredibly straight shooter. Like, I always feel like if I want somebody who cuts through a lot of the political noise and can actually tell me what's happening behind the scenes, what's true, and can portray it in a really balanced way, he's the guy I go to. Sometimes, I'll be covering what's happening in the Caribbean, the strikes on these suspected narco trafficking boats. And honestly, I have a hard time trusting a lot of the mainstream publications. And I have a hard time trusting a lot of the right wing sources I see on Twitter. And it's Cesar who kind of gives me a little bit of the rundown behind the scenes, especially looking at a lot of Spanish language sources and basically saying, look, I care deeply about making sure that this narco trafficking connected to the Maduro regime just, ends up falling ultimately. But at the same time, I want the US government to, act in accordance with the law. And I just feel like you're always willing to admit when something is really complex, and you're always willing to look past some of the stupid narratives and the flinging of the hot takes to give something a little deeper. What have you worked on in 2025 that you're most proud of?
I would say mostly the coverage in Argentina, because I felt, and this is just my personal reflection, whenever the American press talks about Latin America, there's usually an American-centric lens that tries to read and tries to reflect on things happening in other countries without much of the local input. So what I've been trying to do is just skip that perspective and try to bring more of the local sources, more of the local journalists reporting from the ground. This is true not only for Argentina, but other countries like Bolivia, which recently get rid of the socialist government that has been governing for more than 2 decades in that country. And what I really feel I'm trying to bring to the table is this local perspective, but also making sure that this is interesting for the American reader, trying to make sure that I'm explaining this continent, which is pretty important now for the Trump administration, which seems to be doing this strategic shift from being a global superpower to being very, very focused on the region. And I think this will be really relevant for the next few years.
Are you producing any videos that you're really excited about in 2026 or writing any articles?
Yes. So there's one story from Argentina that not many people are talking about, and it's something that they call causa cuadernos. This is basically, according to the local journalists, the biggest corruption case in Argentinian history. And it's basically a story of one private taxi driver who happens to work with one well-connected businessman, government contractor, and this person throughout many years had some notebooks. That's why the name is Causa Cuadernos, which is means notebooks. And he was keeping a very precise record of all the trips that he did with this government contractor. And at some point, these notebooks fell into the hands of a local Argentinian journalist that started to investigate where the trips were going to, and what this contractor was doing over these trips. And he basically discovered an immense corruption scheme that basically allowed a lot of contractors to give money, cash directly to politicians. And it seems that the main beneficiary of this scheme was the former president, Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, arguably one of the most controversial politicians in Argentina, but also the face of the Argentinian opposition against Javier Milei. And these payments allowed the Argentinian government, or at least these politicians, not only to enrich themselves, but supposedly also support another political projects throughout the region that were political or ideological allies for them. And I think this is a huge story, but also talks a lot about how vulgar corruption happens in South America.
I love your work, Cesar. I feel like you're somehow both producing work that helps us stamp out Peronism once and for all, but you also just bail out my gringa ass all the time in terms of translating awesome publications for me and really doing a good job of keeping your ear to the ground of what's happening locally so that our journalists at Reason who maybe don't have that Spanish language background and don't know which sources to look for within the Argentine press or within the Venezuelan press, we're actually able to, I think, do much better coverage than other American journalists who don't have, people behind the scenes just giving us some of that play-by-play like you do. Thank you so much, Cesar.
Thanks for having me.
Next, I believe we have the man, the myth, the Zach Weissmuller coming up.
Hey,
Where
there.
is he? The boys are back in town. Hi, Zach. We're
Hi,
reunited.
Liz.
They allowed
good
us.
it feels so good to be on a podcast with you this afternoon.
Wow.
Feels familiar.
I can't believe they let us back in business. Wow. This is huge.
Yeah.
Your donation, if you give, can allow Zach and I to reunite once a year on the Reason live stream. Zach,
Money's pouring in.
Zach, why should our donors continue to pay for your ostentatious vacations to Argentina?
Man, I think they should start paying for
Texas
Cesar.
shooting range trips.
Yeah, I think they should start paying for Cesar's vacations to Argentina because, yeah, I agree with you. His reporting there has been awesome. But yeah, I want to go back. I want to see what kind of the second half of Milei's administration looks like for sure, especially after that victory. I'm continuing to do documentary work of that nature, and also doubling down on this video essay form that we've developed in-house.
Nice. Why is it that you were shooting guns on company dime?
Oh man, well, yes, Cesar was there with me. We're working on a documentary about kind of the latest and greatest in 3D printed firearms, which is something I've been doing for years now. That's a nice thing about Reason is like once
your own guns.
Yeah, you're printing. They pay for you to print your own guns, and they also pay for you to, like, once you find something like this that's interesting and kind of like nobody else is quite covering in the way you're covering, they'll just let you keep sticking with it throughout the years. And so this latest installment that's going to come out next year, I think people are going to be blown away by how far this technology has come. I mean, I'm someone who's followed it for a while, and I can't believe that a dumb word cell journo was able to build a handgun in like a couple hours with just a little bit of guidance.
Did you build one for me or no?
Well, we can't talk about that. You're in New York City, so
it's illegal to even talk about it.
Yeah.
We'll text private. We'll signal chat about this in a little bit.
Sure.
No, what video essays are you working on right now?
Yeah, so for people who don't know, the video essay is this kind of like extended examination of a cultural trend or a political idea or maybe a historical concept that's relevant again. You just had a great one on the trad wife movement and feminism and liberation and what it all means. My most recent one was in the lead up to the election of your new socialist mayor, Zoran Mamdani. And in that case, I just felt need to make sense of the fact that America's biggest city was about to elect an unapologetic socialist. And as you know, this is not the, Denmark is pretty cool type of socialist either, but the actual let's seize the means of production, DSA, true believer. Like, why? How? So yeah, the products like this is just like a chance to go deeper than looking at the electoral dynamics of New York City, and just ask really fundamental questions like, why won't socialism die even though it's failed every single time it's been tried? And you and I had been having some conversations about that on Just Asking Questions, RIP, that got the noggin jogging. And I turned to some of the greats who'd asked that exact question: Hayek, Schumpeter, both these brilliant economists who grappled with the rise of collectivism in the 40s. And you can watch the essay for the full answer, but the thumbnail is kind of, libertarians, we're really good. We tend to be really good at talking about kind of the empirical case for why markets provide value and provide a better standard of living and material abundance. And that's all really important, and Reason's going to continue doing that because we've got the facts on our side, we've got history on our side. But what I came to the conclusion to is that the kind of enduring allure of socialism is about something a little different. It's about them making a moral case that socialism is morally superior and more just than liberal capitalism. And we as libertarians need to continue to and sharpen our case for the morality of freedom, of liberty, and sort of standing up for the values, the cultural values that are necessary to perpetuate and sustain a free society. Hayek, who I quote in the essay, said that every generation, basically, you need to make it exciting and an intellectual adventure to defend freedom. Otherwise, it just does kind of stagnate, and it opens the opportunity for the disgruntled people who feel like they're not high up enough on the social hierarchy or whatever to like tear it down and then like jockey for their new position. And so, that's this form, this like 20 to 30 minute video essay. It's really caught on quite well on YouTube. And it's encouraging because it's showing me that people, they want to engage deeply with these ideas. They want to have kind of a sustained sit down and let it wash over them, let the absorb it. And I'm a big believer in the audiovisual medium of, the images can reinforce kind of the writing in a way that really helps you remember it and kind of take it all in a different way. So that's what you're funding when you donate to Reason. And I really appreciate everyone who has supported in the past and is going to support after this. So we can keep doing that.
I'll take full credit for the fact that you have now shifted to wanting to make the moral case for capitalism and libertarianism. He spends a year and a half doing a podcast with one single Catholic lady, and suddenly this is what we're getting from Reason's very own Zach Weissmuller.
This is the Liz Wolfe effect. It's powerful, unstoppable.
I can fix him, is what they all say, but I did. No, I'm just kidding. Zach, tell me a little bit about you. You had your highly successful Luigi Mangione video, and I feel like that was a little bit of, it was sort of similar in that you were trying to do a little bit of like philosophizing and psychologizing as to like, why is it that this man has garnered such a cult following, especially among young people? Why is it that we have this enduring fascination with these horrible and very political killers? What is it that you sort of learned about the sort of collective psyche there?
Yeah, I mean, this is a thread that I kind of stretched back for me to kind of the early 2000s, and then historically you can keep going back, but I should say like the 2010s, which is when I kind of started at Reason, and I was covering kind of the beginnings of the campus madness that we all know too well now, with the microaggressions and so forth. This idea that speech equals violence, and it.
As an aside, if you want to see early Zach haircuts, you can go back in the Reason TV archive to see him interviewing college students about, trigger warnings and safe spaces.
See the progression. Yeah. So there's yeah, that idea that words equal violence, which we've all heard. I think that the Luigi moment was kind of a culmination of that. I mean, he literally inscribed his message on the bullets that killed Brian Thompson, and or, I should say, allegedly, he's still going through a trial right now. And that's, I believe, the Charlie Kirk shooter also did a similar thing. So we're in a, and then the disturbing thing, of course, were the celebrations that we saw after both of those events, and this kind of normalization of the other side is becoming dehumanized, and it's okay to dance on their graves. And again, this is another reason I really value working at Reason, because we're quite allergic to that sort of tribalism, and we're trying to give reasons for what we believe in, and not just kind of affiliation in that way. And I think because of that, we're much less susceptible to falling prey to that kind of sickness. So that was the thrust of the Luigi essay.
Zach, obviously I need to suck up to you in order to receive my gun Christmas gift that I know will be coming my way very soon. But I do just always feel like your work is so deeply humane, and
Thank you.
there's a real yearning to get to the root of where people's heads are at, to take them seriously, to meet them where they're at, to not let them off the hook for any sort of lazy thinking or lazy moralizing, but rather to push them to just interrogate their priors a little bit more deeply. And obviously you do so with hopes that that leads to libertarian ends. But I just always really appreciate that ethos with which you approach your work. And I strongly advise all people interested in donating to that type of journalism to do so, because this is the type of thing that your dollars help fund. It's not just Zach playing hooky and going to shooting ranges. It's not just him messing around with a 3D printer in his spare time. It's not just those trips to Argentina to, go eat slightly overcooked meat. I mean, there's real products that are generated by this. And I don't know. I mean, Zach, you've been at Reason for so long in your career, but it's just so obvious that you've had this ethos for more than a decade now, and that Reason is a place that has, teased that out of you further, but also allowed you to channel that towards such productive ends. I mean,
Yes.
if only we could clone you, then I do think libertarianism would win. I think
Liz,
it would be
thank you so much.
possible.
That right back at you, all of that. And being affiliated with Reason, there's a reason I've been affiliated with them for so long, because they have been nothing but supportive, and really helped me shape and develop that editorial perspective. I work very closely with Jim Epstein, who's the now kind of editor-in-chief of a bunch of different things at Reason, but his kind of mentorship's been really valuable. And that, this institution, I'm one of dozens, maybe hundreds, who can
There are
say
dozens
that
of
now.
us.
So, yeah, so thank you again to all the donors who've supported that over the years.
Thank you, Zach.
Thanks, Liz.
If you're watching on YouTube, you can give right here with the donate button. We made it very obvious, but you can also click the link in the description or in the comments on Facebook and Twitter, aka X. Or if you so choose and you're very old school, you can go directly to reason.com/donate, or you can go find my Reason Roundup newsletters and use my donation link there and put Reason Roundup in the comments to detail exactly why you're giving, which I know is, very Reason Roundup linked. Or you can also, if to the greatest degree possible, tell us what you're liking about what we're putting out there. Tell us who you're trying to support. Give us a little bit of a sense of what types of things you want to see more of, ideally not less of. We're trying to convey a little bit of a sense of the range that we put out there here at Reason, and the many different types of people we employ to just pursue their individual passion projects for freedom. So please tell us what you like. We want to sort of serve all interests and needs, provided it's in, service of liberty. Who do we have next? Hello, she's back from book leave. It's Emma Camp.
I know, I'm back after 3 long months of hibernation. I have returned.
Wow. Which book are you writing? What are you doing? Do we need another book?
I think so. So I'm working on a collection of essays. The working title is Good Boundaries, Essays on an Age of Risk Aversion. And it's about how the generational malaise among Gen Z is, in my view, downstream of risk aversion, and specifically risk aversion around social risks. So I think what's happening is that people are really overrating the risks of things like, you get to know someone and maybe they'll abandon you or hurt your feelings or ask too much of you or become quote unquote toxic. I think people are overrating.
Go on book leave.
Right. Or go on book leave and abandon reason doing that. But, overrate these social risks and underrate the risks of being lonely and isolated.
That's so basically your thesis is the kids aren't all right. Isn't this contra everything that Reason has ever put out there?
I mean, the tech question is connected and separate. Like, I think getting into the question of like, are the phones poisoning kids' minds? I think that technology has the potential to be a force for social connection. I think everyone has a story of like, I certainly do, of a close friend that they only met on the internet. I'm not anti-technology, but the problem is that I think that someone living a really lonely and isolated life in 2025 can sort of create the illusion that they are less isolated than they are versus if they were with the technology that you might have had 30 years ago. Like if you're totally isolated and you have no friends in the 90s, you might have the internet, but not that many people are on it, and you have TV. Whereas now you can sort of live in these really rich online worlds that don't actually give you the value of other people and sort of the interconnectedness of other people. So this isn't a regulate tech argument, but it is a maybe if your screen time is like 10 hours a day, that's probably bad for you argument. I think that's a thing most people, even Reasonites, can begrudgingly agree with.
Do you think libertarians are wired to be more or less risk averse on average?
I mean, I think they're wired to be less risk averse. I mean, I do think there is something about the sort of individualistic impulse, and I do think that is different from being socially isolated. I think thinking that the government should perceive people as individuals, that individuals are sort of responsible for themselves, can be a force for community, right? It's like, I'm going to seek out community because I am not hoping that the state will do it for me. So a kind of argument that I see all the time online from young people that really frustrates me is like, oh, we don't have any third spaces anymore. Like, I'm so lonely because there are no third spaces. And the way that I could be less lonely would be if the government would just like build this community center or whatever, as if government community centers don't already exist. If the state would just come in and rescue me, if I could go to the union meeting or whatever, then I would be less lonely. And my response to this is the loneliness epidemic is kind of a choice. And you can use your individual agency just to have friends. Like, I throw a huge house party once a month, and I throw dinner parties once a month too. Like, I'm constantly having social interactions happening. I'm constantly having social events, and the state wasn't compelling me to do that. And I think part of that is I have this like can-do impulse that I think is quite libertarian in nature.
I have a hard time opposing state-mandated dinner parties just because I'm personally such a fan of them. But I hear what you're saying. It is interesting, sort of riffing on these themes. People, I think, sometimes conflate these, libertarians are always in support of hedonism versus, I think maybe the truer thing that's at play psychologically is like libertarians tend to be a lot less, I think, risk averse than the general population. We feel comfortable with the fact that there's risk that you assume just by being alive, and living a rich and full life means you're assuming even more risk, and that people should really be allowed to consider trade-offs and be allowed to draw those lines in lots of different places. And I think libertarians are just wired to have this very innately pluralist sense of what works for me might not work for you. My sense of risk tolerance might vary drastically from my neighbor's sense of risk tolerance, and that it takes all kinds to make a world, and that this is a good thing and something that we just need to encourage more of, that we sort of learn more truth, uncover more truth in a very million sense, the more we allow people to sort of draw their lines in different places. Do you think the internet's flattening that over time?
I think that I'm cautious of making too broad an argument about the internet being bad, but I do think when you look at a phenomenon like cancel culture, you were talking about how libertarians sort of have this pluralistic impulse when it comes to where people draw their risk tolerances. I think that that kind of impulse is also helpful when it comes to making friends that might disagree with you. Like I have these beliefs, I think they're correct. Like someone who disagrees with me on like a moral issue, I'm not like, oh, well, maybe I'm right, maybe you're right. Like I do think I'm right, but I'm also willing to be like, reasonable minds can disagree. Like someone who disagrees with me and who I think is wrong, I don't think they're a moral monster inherently because they disagree with me. And that allows me to make friends pretty easily because I don't subject everyone I meet to like this rigid ideological litmus test. And I think when you see something like, so I've written this essay about cancel culture, and right now, I mean, obviously, who knows what will happen in editing, but right now, my case is that this is most interesting as an interpersonal phenomenon. Like most people were never at risk of being canceled on Twitter, but a lot of people, especially people who grew up, glued to Tumblr, like people in my generation did, or people who are sort of in their 20s now, it ends up becoming a kind of like girl on girl middle school style bullying where people who have no online presence and never will, or like no significant online presence and never will, are like subjecting each other to these ideological litmus tests. And suddenly you're losing your friend because you don't believe this or do believe that, or you put your foot in your mouth one time. And I think that the internet makes that interpersonal phenomenon public. But I think that sort of like that the ideological litmus test, the inability to withstand discomfort, the inability to believe that someone might be a good person and also disagree with you is a huge problem that I see so much in the thinking of people my age and people I went to school with.
I like that you're channeling some old school Jonathan Haidt right now. Emma, I'm so curious. What is it that you've produced for Reason in the last year or so that you're most proud of? And what should people look for from you in 2026 other than, more from your book?
Okay, so I think I have two answers for this. About a year ago, I published for Reason an investigation into a child protective services case that was really tragic. This happens fairly frequently. It was a family who had a infant, I think she was 3 months old at the time, who they noticed was having some swelling on one of her legs. They were concerned. They took her to the doctor, and before they knew it, they were accused of abusing her. And it was a really horrible case. I believe at this point, the children had been reunited with their parents, and the parents were eventually brought up on criminal charges. The whole thing was insane. At one point, the mother had only been charged, and the judge ruled that the children should not get to go to their father because he refused to say that he believed his wife could have abused their child. He was like, no, I don't think my wife could have done this. And she went, well, that's evidence that you're a bad father because abuse is so obvious you're refusing to admit it could have happened. When in fact, there was a totally reasonable medical explanation for this girl's injuries. She had other medical issues happening. She had these like yellowed whites of her eyes. She had a soft spot on her head that was kind of in the wrong place and far too big for a baby of her age. It was just obvious that she had just some medical complexity that hadn't been solved. And in fact, when she was genetically tested, there were some kind of collagen issues that might have related to the fractures that she suffered. And it was just horrible. This family, like their daughters were taken from them. And the state really just took this position that it took this position that felt to the family very much like they would have been treated better if they had admitted to abuse they didn't do. Because what's worse, right? Like abusing your baby and then admitting that you did it and that you're sorry, or abusing your baby and refusing to say that you did it. And so it puts you in a situation where if you deny that you abused your child, you're perceived as worse.
Wow, I love that your work sort of covers the span of like possible child abuse cases or people accused of child abuse by the state, which, any parent can tell you is possibly, the most horrifying thing that could possibly happen, all the way up to like, are the kids watching too much porn these days and failing to find girlfriends? How do you stay sane?
I mean, I find stories like this really fascinating. I mean, I sometimes joke like a lot of the investigations I do for Reason. I did another case also earlier this year about families of sort of gender non-conforming children, some of which affirmed their child's gender identity and wanted to go forward with a transition. Others became more concerned and just wanted to sort of slow walk it. On both sides of that kind of child transition issue, facing state intervention. And facing sort of the government sort of trying to interfere with that family's decision. That was also really difficult. I sort of joke that like a lot of the times I have these phone calls where a source is crying because they're describing something that's like objectively horrible and really tragic that's happened to them. And I'm sort of going like, this is terrible, but this is going to be great on the page. Like, oh my gosh, this is so horrible. You're like, your child got taken away. You were accused of something you didn't do. You know, you have this student loan debt. I did a story, this was more than a year ago, but a woman who was sort of pushed by an unscrupulous university into taking on far more student loan debt than she needed. And it was really horrible. And I was like, these are all really tragic. And I feel really sorry for you guys. But this is going to be like really powerful. And I'm kind of a person who's sort of like morbidly interested in those like really horrible stories. But then I also am morbidly interested in like, yeah, maybe people are watching a little too much porn and that is keeping them from finding girlfriends.
I love how your work really you seem so focused on what are the ways in which the state is actively thwarting people's ability to live the lives they want, but also what are the ways in which people self-sabotage and get in their own way of living good lives. And you ask very deep questions, I think, about what the good life looks like and how we can pursue that human flourishing and how we can just make it easier for people to live good lives, ideally with as little state intrusion as possible. Thank you so much, Emma Camp.
Thank you, Liz Wolfe.
You can go ahead and donate to Reason's Webathon via the donate button here on YouTube, or you can also click the link in the description, which will take you to other places where you can give your donation. We are so, so grateful. We have more people coming up, but we are just so grateful for every dollar amount, big ones, small ones, everything in between, truly anything you can spare. We love having lots of smaller donors because it just helps us retain our independence and, helps us know that we're serving lots of different types of people with lots of different interests. Who do we have next? Do we have, I think Justin Zuckerman might be waiting in the wings, possibly in DC. Hello.
Hey, Liz. How's it going?
It's going great. Justin Zuckerman, tell me, why do you think my child's daycare should be unregulated?
Well, I'll tell you, because it gets more expensive the more you regulate it. We saw that here in DC specifically, which has among the highest daycare rates in the country. In fact, it costs about $24,000 a year to send your kid to daycare. I made a documentary on this topic. Washington, D.C. passed a law requiring daycare workers to get a college degree, which, sounds well intelligent.
Why?
Well, because
sense,
when you go to college, you get a well-rounded education where you, if you go to college in DC to become a childhood educator, you get to learn about Shakespeare, you get to learn about musical instruments, religions of the world. And, anyone who's ever had a kid ask them why over and over, it's good to know all these things and to pay to go to college for it. And so that's one of the many topics that I focus on is kind of those well-intentioned laws that can have big consequences. We saw that in DC where literally, so in my documentary, we talk about there's one daycare that had a teacher who literally is an adjunct professor at a local university, but because she didn't have the necessary degree, she's not qualified to teach in a daycare setting in Washington, D.C. So that's just one of the many things that can happen when you use a very blunt instrument to regulate your way into solving problems that might not necessarily even be there.
It's just absolutely insane to me. I mean, I understand that the people who are writing these regulations are well-intentioned, but it kind of feels like I don't know, like the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? Like this has always been such a thing that has bothered me as a libertarian. This idea of like, yeah, I get it, your heart's in the right place, but like, is your mind? And just this inability to think through what the second order impacts of some of these regulations could be. I mean, anyone who spends a lot of time with a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, I'm sorry, but you don't need to be able to analyze the themes and motifs present in Hamlet in order to be able to do a good job. It's just always struck me as kind of bananas.
Yeah, in my documentary, we literally feature. So we have the lawmaker talking about why it's so important to learn Shakespeare, and then we cut that with a 2-year-old who's chewing on a toy car, trying to learn to walk, and it's like these kids need just tactical. They need to learn how to
Man-on-man defense is what they
Yeah.
need.
Well, they just need like experiences. They need to be in a safe, welcoming, enriching environment, which is something that you can't also teach necessarily. And it's good to be qualified, but a big reason also is they did a study and they found that kids who go to daycares and if a daycare teacher has a college degree, the kid is likely to go on perhaps to a more successful future. But that tends to be because the places that have teachers with college degrees tend to cater to wealthier parents, and it's more likely the wealth, in fact, of the family and the kind of home that creates, rather than the actual teacher with a degree in the general daycare education.
Yeah, that strikes me as like an obvious causation correlation muddling. Tell me, what are you working on? What do you have in the hopper for 2026?
So for 2026, speaking of good intentions, I've got a story on Waymo and autonomous vehicles coming up. It's really fascinating. I really want to explore how these cars, these kind of new ride-sharing technologies, can totally reshape American cities. As we all know, America is kind of car crazy. We really love cars, but they're also very dangerous, and we revolve our lives around them so much. So if we had autonomous vehicles, cars that didn't have an actual driver in them, that are so much safer, have 90% fewer crashes, hardly any deaths, we can really revolutionize the way that we interact with each other and with cities and with our spaces. And so I'm kind of contrasting that with these small local governments who are trying to put up roadblocks, so to say, in front of autonomous vehicles. For example, in Boston, they're trying to pass a law requiring human safety operators in every autonomous vehicle, or they're just trying to stop them in general, mainly because the local unions, the Teamsters and the App Drivers Union, are worried that their jobs are being threatened and are trying to do anything that they can to slow that progress. And what we're likely to see is you'll have places like Austin or Miami or Dallas kind of thrive very likely with these new technologies, while you have these northeastern cities, Boston, New York, etc., that are just going to be years behind to a technology that's likely inevitable and very innovative and valuable to residents.
In a sense, this is good for me personally because my sales pitch to my husband that we need to move from New York to Miami will just be made a little bit better if Waymos really proliferate there. No, I mean that's really interesting. It's shocking to me. I mean, this is a tale as old as time, right? We see this over and over again, where the people who stand to lose their jobs from a technological innovation, understandably, can't really see the long-term gains and are just entirely focused on the short-term disruption. Which, understandably, for any individual, an individual Teamster, I guess I can channel the tiniest bit of sympathy for, I guess, if I must. I can understand why they feel a sense of why they feel threatened by these new technologies, but it's also really hard. I mean, going back to the sort of risk assessment things that I was talking about with Emma Camp, this seems like something that will just save thousands and thousands of human lives in America every single year, right? Do you have a sense of what those numbers are?
Yeah, well, I mean, 40,000 people on average die every year in America from car accidents, and many more, face serious injuries. There's over $1 trillion spent on automotive crashes and whatnot. And yes, we should be sympathetic to the Teamster, to the Uber driver, and we should figure out, ways in which they can adapt, but we shouldn't slow progress, especially if we can save thousands of lives, tens of thousands of lives, in order to kind of move forward and to advance our society into a safer, more hospitable place to be.
Justin Zuckerman, it sounds like what you're saying is that donating to Reason today has the opportunity to, in some small way, save thousands of lives in America every year. Am I hearing you correctly?
I think that's certainly one way to interpret what I was saying, is that if you want to save thousands of lives.
I do think we've seen this a little bit. It's sometimes frustrating whenever you're looking for a little bit of a pro technology, pro disruption take. It feels like it's a really dark, bleak journalistic landscape for that out there. And I do feel like, just to toot our own horns for a second, because that's what this is. Reason is just so consistently interested in saying, okay, well, what are the ways in which tech might need to be harnessed to serve better ends, or, what are some possible hazards and harms? But by and large, our disposition, I think, on an individual level, but also on like an editorial level, is just, we are so interested in how technology can shape the future and what type of progress will be coming our way in the coming years and decades. And it's really exciting, I think, working at a place where people share that disposition, especially as that mindset becomes vanishingly rare among journalists. And I kind of don't know how it ended up this way, but I, for one, welcome our Waymo overlords. I don't know about you, Justin.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's what's so great about Reason, is this kind of techno-optimism perspective that we have, where you can both embrace technology and also see that it can bring a lot of positive. And I think Waymo is a perfect example of the idea of being in a car where there's no driver and the steering wheel is just moving is probably will cause some trepidation in people at first. But when you pair that with, as I was saying, thousands of lives being saved, changing the way that we design our cities to be a more connective and enjoyable place, is, one that I think is very exciting and it should be embraced.
Also, what a beautiful thing for like the elderly who maybe are in some cases less comfortable driving, or people who need to have their mobility limited because their licenses are taken away, or for, those teenage drivers who are less experienced and sort of unsafe on the roads. This really could sort of help people at the margins who have very legitimate reasons why it might be harder for them to drive or to drive safely. This might make it so that they're not putting themselves at risk any longer. It's again, like, I'm trying to be nice to the Teamsters, but I'm not trying that hard to be nice to the Teamsters. I do think that it's just so obvious, all the good things that are going to come our way because of this technology. And I appreciate you, Justin, being on the front lines advocating for it.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. It's one more reason, having a Waymo, something like that available, another reason to take the keys away from a potential drunk driver or someone who isn't capable of driving, or for whatever reason.
Yes, the other marginalized swath of our society, the drunk.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Thank you so much, Justin.
Thank you, Liz.
I believe we have a grand finale coming up in one moment here. If you want to donate to Reason and cite this live stream or any of the work that we've showcased here, please take this opportunity to do so. I think we have just one more journalist that we're going to be throwing on stage here. He covers super cheery stuff. You'll be really excited to see his smiling face. DC, do we have him yet? Take another moment to work on your donation. It's available at the YouTube link. It's available in the YouTube description. If you're watching on Reason or on X, it's also available there, or you can go directly to reason.com/donate. Let's get that ticker up. Once again, we are just so extraordinarily grateful for anything big or small. It all helps make our journalism happen and just helps us succeed. We really appreciate it. There he is, Billy Binion. What's up?
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good to see you.
So tell me, what's the cheeriest story you've covered in the last year, and what's the most depressing?
Oh gosh. Okay, the most depressing.
That one's easier, maybe, given your beat.
Yes. Okay. So I did a print feature that I was proud of on something called acquitted conduct sentencing, which is when you are acquitted in court, but you receive a split verdict. And there is a little known avenue that judges can use. If they disagree with the jury's not guilties, but you're still convicted of something, they can sentence you on the guilty verdicts, which is just kind of a crazy little known legal practice that I think has flown under the radar in a lot of ways. The U.S. Sentencing Commission recommended that judges stop doing that, but those recommendations are non-binding. So I mean, I just think it's kind of insane. I covered a couple of defendants who have spent significant time in prison for charges on which they were acquitted, which is something that kind of keeps me up at night. What was the first one?
Have you ever covered anything cheery that you're proud of?
Cheery. Gosh.
That's pretty dark.
Recently, this is kind of niche, but I thought the Nobel Prize recommendations this year were good. They like really leaned into people who are like libertarian-y. The people who won the econ Nobel Prize were like people who've written about progress and innovation, and the Peace Prize was won by Marina Cachado, who the Venezuela activist, pro-democracy activist. I don't know if that's necessarily cheery, but I thought it was good to like spotlight these people who often kind of are ignored by these committees.
Do you think this means the world is trending in a more libertarian direction?
I think, I'm not sure if I would go so far as to say it's trending in a more libertarian direction, but I do think people are kind of waking up to like the horrors of what it's like for people in places like Venezuela and Cuba. I mean, these are countries that I've always kind of been fascinated by in terms of just how terribly authoritarian their governments are and the suffering that people endure living there. I don't know if anyone is familiar with a woman named Asada Shakur, but she was a Black liberation
unfortunately.
Yes, who was convicted in the 70s of killing a police officer and was smuggled to Cuba, where she ended up living the rest of her life. And I was always kind of fascinated by her. And she died in September, and I wrote this kind of blistering obituary about her. And the reason I was fascinated by her is that she is this microcosm of supposed freedom fighters who lift up places like Venezuela and Cuba. This is not like the Democratic Party. This is like the very far left, who lift up these terribly authoritarian regimes as this bastion of like they're doing it right, they're fighting for the little guy, and these are places that there are no meaningful civil liberties, dissent is criminalized, and so I am grateful for any opportunity for the public to see and be reminded of how lucky we are for having access to the sorts of liberties that we do, and how hopefully these countries will see these regimes fade away into the dustbin of history.
I think that's very beautiful. Asada Shakur is sort of somebody who, for whatever reason, every new generation of young lefty activists sort of retains some fondness for them. I mean, I think there's just like this romanticism that sort of creeps in, and it's really disappointing. And I hope it dies with the woman herself.
Right.
I mean,
I wanted to write that obituary, because you're totally right. She is still like bafflingly heroized by a lot of people, and I think it really represents this very uncomfortable contradiction that if you claim to be a freedom fighter, as she did, and has a lot of people on the far left do, maybe in a well-intentioned way, then you cannot support these governments that stifle freedom in every meaningful way.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. What of the criminal justice rage stories, like which stories have really gotten your blood boiling that you've covered over the last year or so?
Civil forfeiture is always one that I think unites people, not just libertarians, but conservatives, liberals, progressives. These are people who I've written about a few people who've had huge sums of money seized, and were never suspected, much less charged or convicted of a crime.
Money that they could have given to reason, might I add.
Right.
But unfortunately, now the government has it. Terrible.
Right. And that's something that I think there is so much opposition to that practice, and for some reason it just never changes, and I think it's kind of shameful. I've also this is something that's not necessarily criminal justice-y, but I write a lot, and I'm continuing to write a lot about something called home equity theft when
Hmm.
someone falls behind on their taxes. An outrage story. I think the question was, what's the most outrageous? In August, I published a piece on this 91-year-old woman who she forewent her yearly trip to the tax office in Pennsylvania during COVID because she had heard the government was pausing enforcement of property taxes. And so when she went back in 2021, she thought it was going to be applied to her 2020 debt, but instead it was applied to 2021. And so she had this kind of donut in her tax history. And so the government, and she's 91, she has dementia, the government sells that tax debt in 2022 to a private firm for the value of her debt. And then the firm seized her house. They paid $14,000 for it. She had already essentially finished paying off the mortgage. And a similar case is headed to the Supreme Court. So it's an issue I've been interested in for a long time. The Supreme Court technically ruled home equity theft illegal in 2023, but governments have found ways to work around it, like by selling debt to private companies such that there is no leftover equity to speak of. I just think that's unconscionable. Obviously, you have to pay your taxes. We live in a society, but I think we should all be able to agree that, if you have a $250,000 home, as this woman did, and if you have a very modest tax debt, which hers was $3,500, $14,000 with interest and penalties and all that, that sure, you have to satisfy the debt, but you shouldn't lose everything you've worked for and all the generational wealth that you're hoping to leave behind.
Is this type of thing just like an oversight that sort of nobody really pays attention to? Or, I mean, is the system like, why is it that this type of thing so frequently gets sort of looked over? Like nobody really knows that it's happening.
Yeah, I think the basic answer is that it happens to people who, don't typically draw big headlines, like older people, poor people. I mean, I'm not saying that old people and poor people never get into the media, but it's often people without a platform, I will say.
Hmm.
And so I also think that these kind of like niche, especially like a tax issue, which was not seen as sexy to a lot of people in the press. I've always just been kind of fascinated though with finding these very like niche stories that go under the radar, and I think that's kind of Reason's value add, is that you're reading a lot of things that you're not going to see in other places, and for whatever reason that might be. And I'm glad that we're able to shine a spotlight on those things.
Billy Binion, you have a real knack for sexing up some really, really unsexy terms, whether it's civil asset forfeiture or home equity theft. It's
Right.
I
I
think
know people's eyes glaze
hidden
over.
talent. It's a true hidden talent, but it is really, I mean, to the victims of these terrible injustices, it must just be such a relief that journalists like you are willing to hop on the phone with them and sort of get to the bottom of their stories and tell it accurately, portray it accurately, and sort of give them a fair shake. What's the most flattering bit of, feedback or praise that you've ever gotten from somebody whose story you've covered?
Oh, that's a good question. I've had people, I don't know that I could distill it into one. But I've had people, I guess one of the more satisfying bits would be hearing from, like pro bono attorneys' offices that they were able to find cases by reading them. I mean, that's not necessarily like a flattering bit of praise, but the idea that like someone at the MacArthur Center for Justice was like reading Reason magazine and found, like a client they ended up representing in court to help fight some of these like terrible things. I mean, that's kind of like the dream, right? Is hoping that your work has some sort of practical impact, whether it's something as small as finding an attorney or getting like a favorable outcome.
Yeah, that it gives a lifeline to somebody who felt like their story was never going to be heard and like the injustice perpetrated against them was never going to be taken seriously. I mean, I can't imagine how good that must feel to, sort of have your case go from something that's a huge deal to you, but that nobody else is interested in and nobody else is paying attention to and that nobody's indignant and riled up about.
Right.
I think that this is a real service that libertarians can provide to everyone, but just the fact that we are willing to get riled up about things that I think both people on left and right sort of, take for granted or just assume is just the way it has to be. And libertarians are willing to sometimes go back to first principles and say, actually, there's no reason for it to be like this. Actually, this injustice that you feel is warranted and legitimate, and you shouldn't have the state bullying you like this. I think your work does a really good job of highlighting that, Billy.
Thank you.
I think this is where we will wrap it. Thank you so much, Billy Binion. To everyone who has not yet donated, please, if you feel called, head over to that donate link. It is available in the YouTube description. It is available by going to reason.com/donate. And we're running this webathon for the next week or so. You will continue to see many pleas from us. The roundtablers are going to answer some of your questions. I'll be continuing to ask for your help and your donations in Reason Roundup each day, as long as the webathon continues. But please just know from the bottom of our hearts, we're so profoundly grateful. No matter how big, no matter how small, whatever you have to spare, please know that we're trying to make a more libertarian world. We're trying to do good journalism. And it's just such a blessing to be able to do that every single day. Your donation really helps make that possible. Thank you so much.